All right, let's go over some of the effects options here in Photoshop. So before I get started, I just want to let you know that the workspace that I'm using is up here. If I go to Window and I go to Workspace, I'm using the Essentials workspace. And the most important panel we want to use is the Layers panel right here. And within the Layers panel, you want to be able to see all of these layers here. Okay, we have two text layers, a shape layer, and then a background layer. But down here, these are the important options we want to access with these layers. All right, so now that we kind of have our workspace set up, what I want to do is show you guys how to use the effects on something like typography or other graphic elements, but use them in a way that's helping you to either pull stuff forward, so get something to be more in focus, to have it be more prominent from its background, or even do the reverse, have it look like it's embedded within the background. They're pretty easy effects, but I just want to review how you can use these effects options. So first step, you want to select the layer that you're going to apply an effect to. So I'm going to select the layer that says Layer. And then I'm going to come down here and I'm looking for this icon that says the letter F and X, and it says Add Layer Style. It's a little confusing. Think of Effects, Layer Style, and Blending Options. They're all the same thing, just kind of using different words. So I'm going to add a layer style, and I'm going to go to here, Blending Options. A little confusing, but we'll get used to it. It's going to open up another window. One thing I don't like about Photoshop's interface is we want to be able to see what we're doing, okay, from this window and then our actual file here. So just know you can zoom in while you're using this window, and I like to see a little bit over here on this side and then a little bit over here in my window. So blending options, we'll get back to this stuff here, but look at this. You see like a general list, okay, of these ubiquitous effects that you can apply to layers. Now the most ubiquitous effect that you can apply is right down here, okay, a drop shadow. So I'm going to come down here. It's very important that you know that if you just click here on the little checkbox, it's going to apply a drop shadow, but you really don't see any options on how to deal with it. So what you actually need to do is click on the word drop shadow, and then after you do that, you will see right here there's a special set of options just for the drop shadow. First option, okay, the color and the blend mode of the drop shadow. Okay, we'll keep it at multiply. The color, if I click on this, we could choose something from the background that we're using, which is always a good idea. So I'll just choose like this color hue and then move this color picker down here into the darker range. So that'll probably be dark enough. Then we have the opacity of the drop shadow. Right now it's kind of crazy, it's just dispersed everywhere. Remember, a drop shadow requires a lighting effect, and so this option here is adjusting the angle where the light comes from. And so we'll just say, you know, the light is coming from the top, okay? Mostly from the top, maybe from the right or the left. If I check this, use global light, okay, what it'll do is make sure that any other effects I use in this file will use this same angle. So sometimes this is really cool because it'll make everything look really consistent. So I got an angle of 120. Then I have the distance of the drop shadow. Now you can really see what it's doing. If I adjust the distance, I make it look as though it's a cutout that is hovering above the background, okay? And depending on where I put this drop shadow, it can look like it's far above, or if I sneak it in real close, it can look like it's very close to the surface. Then we have this one, which is called the size and the spread. So the size is like the overall shape of the shadow, and then the spread is how far you allow the darkness to fill inside the size. Okay. So we'll get something that's relatively consistent. So I'll do a size around 15 and a spread maybe a little bit smaller than that. And I will sneak this up a little bit closer. Okay, and so now it looks like, okay, it's hovering right on top of the background. I'm going to drop the opacity because I want to show you that you can layer your effects. Okay, so I'll drop my opacity to about 60. There's some other options in here. I won't go over this right now. But we have a drop shadow here. Look at this. We could actually, right here, we could click add a drop shadow. Okay, or I already had one. But right here, when you do that, it'll duplicate your drop shadow. And so one thing I can do is I can create this more realistic effect where I have a shadow that's relatively low in opacity, but then I could have another shadow, okay, that's even closer to my letter form, and I'll increase the opacity, okay, which will give it like a really, this is a very like photographic effect right now. We have what's called an occluded shadow that's really close to the object. It's really dark. I'll just bump it up to 100. So that's one part of the drop shadow, and then we have another part of the drop shadow that's dispersed. I'll go ahead and click OK, zoom out, see what I got. Okay, great. We have a great. So now we have a text layer that is now separating from the background. Now look in the layers panel, all of this is editable. So for instance, I could turn off right here where it says effects. Just see how it looked like before, turn it back on. I could turn off just the drop shadow if I've added multiple effects. I could double click on effects and come right back to these options. Important thing, click on the name of the effect to actually modify it. All right, let's try another one. So this one right here, it says effects. The goal here is we want to make it look like this text is actually embedded into the surface behind it. So how can we do that? Well, I'm going to select the layer that says effects, and I'll select, okay, the option for effects or layer style or blend options. Remember, they're all the same. So I'll go to blending options, and remember, I like to zoom in to see, okay, what I'm going to do on a closer level. All right, so for this one, we want to actually play around with these two options here, inner shadow and inner glow. Let's try inner glow first. Now, just because it says glow does not mean that this effect needs to be like a bright color or a light, okay? So I'm going to click on this, and it does default to a light color. So blend mode is screen, which is for a light color. And you can kind of play around and see what it's doing, but it's adding kind of a lighter glowing edge on the inside. Okay, they changed the word spread and choke on this one, but it's the same situation where the size is like the total, it's the total diameter or radius, whereas the choke kind of fills within that. So if I move the choke up a lot, you can see it's kind of filling that all the way. Okay, whereas the size is just, okay, that total area. So get something that looks like this. You can see a little bit of a dispersed edge. Again, we want it to not be too hard edge, so I want to have it have a little bit of a gradient to it. So I'll do size at around 20, and I'll do a choke, or remember we could call it a spread. I might adjust this. I'll start with something like 30. But right here, let's change these options here. First thing, let's change the color. I don't like working with this color. So I'm going to click on the color picker, and I'm going to move or pan down. And again, try to find like a base color hue, something a little bit warmer. And then I'll drag this down here into, I'm going to tint the color, or shade it rather. After I've done that, I need to change the blend mode. Let's change it back to multiply. And there we go. Now we can see it's got a nice dark edge to it. Let's change the opacity so we can see it a little bit better. Okay, we don't want the opacity to be too extreme, but remember, this is all kind of editable. So we'll just get it started. All right, so I have that. What I don't like right now is that it's filled with brown. Okay, so I wanted to actually just reveal the surface below it. So there's a really cool option here in Photoshop. Now that I have an effect applied, I'm going to make the rest of the pixels on this layer disappear, and all that remains is the effect that I've used. So I'm going to come over here to blending options, and then I'm not going to go to the layer opacity, which is just going to make my whole layer disappear. Instead, I'm going to go to what's called the fill opacity. Think of fill as pixels. So I'm going to make it so the pixels, okay, of those letters disappear, but the effect I applied remains. So now I can see the letters because the glow is revealing them, but I'm not seeing that color fill. So now I'll come back to this inner glow and I'll modify the opacity a little bit more. I might bump this down a little bit, this choke. But then I want to add another layer of realism. I'm going to add the inner shadow. Okay, so it's kind of like a drop shadow, but in reverse. So I'm going to click on that. And remember, we used the global light on the last one. Well, now it's here. We have global light again. I'm going to increase the opacity so you can see it just a little bit better. And now we can see the light's coming from here and then casting a shadow. And you can see there's a difference between each side. The side with the inner shadow is a little bit darker, whereas the inner glow is just allowing us to have a little bit of this dark edge here. If we didn't have the inner glow, okay, it would look too faint. So here's just with the inner shadow. But once I add the inner glow, if we zoom out, we can see those letter forms so much better. But we don't want to be too heavy-handed, so I could actually drop the opacity a little bit more. I could come into the inner glow, or I'm sorry, the inner shadow, and I could make this a little bit more extreme. So now I'm affecting the distance. Remember choke, it's the same thing. It's like how filled you want your shadow to be or how dispersed you want it to be. So again, keep these numbers relatively low. We don't want to get too heavy-handed with it. All right, I like this. So I'm going to keep it with these effects applied. I'm going to click OK. So now look, now we really get, okay, the layer coming forward, the other layer sitting back. We could also do this while it's a text layer. I could double click it. Double click on the T, and we could actually edit the words. So instead of saying effect, I could say shadows. And then we have these ugly blue shapes. It's a layer using the rectangle tool. I just drew two rectangles. But again, we want it to look like it's all cohesive. So watch this. We can take the effects from one layer and we can copy them onto another layer. And that way we don't have to go through this process that we just went through. So I'm going to take the effects and shadows. I'm going to hold down on the Alt or Option key and click and drag this effect onto my frame layer. Release the mouse, then the keys. Now we can see those shapes have an inner glow and an inner shadow applied. The one thing I need to do though is I need to drop the fill opacity on this. So we don't actually have to go back into effects. In our layer panel, we have opacity, but look at this, we have fill right here. So I can take the fill and I can drop that down. Okay, and because it's a vector-based layer, if you have it selected, you're going to see some blue outlines. just go ahead and click on one of your other layers and it will disappear. The other thing I could do is just drop the opacity just a little bit on those, okay, just to make it de-emphasized a little bit more. But there we go. We now have some experience using these effects, and we were able to make these different layers push forward and also push back. So if I were to go into the history here, we can see this is how we started, this is how we ended. All right, I hope that was helpful, and I'll see you in the next exercise.